What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Four Dummies. It's been a while since the Four Dummies have gathered together, but once again, they are gathered together tonight. And tonight we have the usual suspects. We have Mrs. Skullface.
Hello.
Robert Detoff.
Better than 8 weeks.
And just one.
What's happening?
Tonight we are going to talk about production speculation. This is us
Speculating?
Completely speculating, and it's predicated on our backside.
First-hand knowledge.
We don't know anything. We don't know what we're talking about. It's just four friends.
I imagine I'll have a lot to offer this evening.
There's a lot of questions, rumors regarding production, and it's one of the things that I'm most interested in. I recently spoke to a major third-party distributor in the West, and I asked them if they would give me the numbers, and they said they wouldn't. It's a mystery.
Did they tell you why they wouldn't?
They didn't tell me why, but I gathered from the tone and the vibe of the conversation that it was private.
I'm going to speculate that the reason they won't tell you why is because if they told you why, you would know the how.
Right. I think a lot of times when these companies say that they are running a second release of a product, it's actually the first release.
I think for some stuff I do.
I find it bizarre.
Well, you think they're like, they ran the whole load.
Whoa.
Whoa. And I am picking numbers out of my they had to do 100 pieces or whatever when they placed their order. So they would initially release 50 and then release another 50, or if they have 100 and only 50 were bought, and then they pretend to have a second release where they have another 50.
So I think that the average run is probably around 1,000 pieces. And I don't know that to be true. And I think that a lot of times they'll put out 500, 600, 700 pieces and hold on to 300 in a warehouse or in a storage facility. And then
I think anything that comes out super fast, you could make that argument. But there's some stuff that takes like 2 or 3 years. Like, why are they waiting that long?
And what if that factory also makes rulers, and then they go, you know what? We got $250 for this. Let's keep it and send them a ruler.
So we can get into that as well. So to my knowledge, the companies that own their factory are TFC, Unique Toys, and DX9, whatever that conglomerate is. Make Toys, KFC.
Toy World, right? Doesn't Toy World have their own?
Yes, I think it was Toy World. Those companies, like, they're not producing enough product to own a factory. That's not how that works. Like, you don't own a factory and you produce, let's say, 2,000 Optimus Primes, and you're able to keep the factory, all the employees and everything in business. That's the Hasbro guy that we spoke to at Celebration said that a mold for them costs $100,000 per mold.
Wow.
So for that to be the case, these third-party companies are not paid enough by this product to support that. I think that most of these guys are probably passionate fans, figured they can turn a small buck, and are allocating a small section of their factory that normally produces something very mass and common to fulfill this little hobby. I think it's a hobby for them.
Yeah, they could just be running this shit on like weekends or third shifts, you know?
For all we know, yeah. There's no way that a major corporation like Hasbro in America could have the problems it has with production and then simultaneously be competing against an onslaught of third-party products that don't have those same financial means.
Right.
You know, it doesn't add up.
And they're not running the same numbers.
Correct. So I think that it's probably common that most of the third-party companies that own their own factories are producing something that isn't Transformers and then are producing Transformers in a very small space. I think that it's also very common that third-party companies that do own their own factories are also renting those factories to other third-party companies, sometimes sabotaging those products.
I think Keith did it with Omnigonics, right?
Exactly. That was the rumor on the street.
But it wasn't that he sabotaged it. It was just like, look, if you want this quality plastic, you pay this much more. You know, if you want this QC check, you pay this much more. And the guy was just like a designer, and he just either couldn't afford it or wouldn't spend it.
You know what I want to talk about, though, that's speculation / fact, is that how come Fans Toys, I'm not going to ask the question, I'm just going to say it. This is a fact. Fans Toys doesn't get KO'd because they're the KO kings of everything. Their factories are just to make KOs, and that's why they never get KO'd.
So the sense I get from Fans Toys is it is such a passion project for them. And I think you can see that with their price now, because they're not raising their prices significantly, even though Takara is.
I interviewed them years ago, and they were very forthcoming, and they said it was a passion project. They said it didn't pay the bills. It was just because they're fans. And we had a very fluid conversation back and forth, and then I reviewed Cloud9's Quake Wave, and they never spoke to me again.
They stopped talking to you.
They never spoke to me again.
Whoever their designer or designers are, they are close. They trust each other. They're loyal. The owner probably does right by everyone and shares the money. So there's no butthurt over you're keeping all the money. I'm going to strike out of my own. Probably it's cheaper to let the factory keep the mold. I'll bet you Fans Toys pays extra to retain possession of the mold, and they probably go in there and destroy any product that is flawed that would be lying around. They probably are very assertive and aggressive.
Well, we
with
did
regard
see
to their
them
product.
destroy those Quake waves. I mean, those Quake.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Well, how hard is it to take a figure that's already out and just make a mold of that? Like
I don't know.
Instead of having the design,
I
Well, you
mean,
have to have the
we
CAD,
see
right?
No, you don't. Not if
you
it's
can
out.
recast you can just take a toy apart.
Oh, they
and
could.
recast
Yeah,
it.
somebody could recast any Fans Toys figure. I don't know why that hasn't been done.
I do think it's interesting though that with that Quake wave aside, they never get KO'd.
So who do we see get KO'd? MMC had their Predaking KO'd, but we haven't seen much KO'd from MMC afterward.
Warbitron.
Warbitron has been KO'd. Warbitron, Generation Toy, that whole conglomerate has been KO'd. Iron Factory, DX9.
DX9.
What about the Make Toys KOs? Because the rumor on the street was that the Make Toys KOs were just Make Toys releasing them as KOs to liquidate stock.
That's a smart thing to do because then
It's
you're
clever. It's
Yeah.
I mean, you're not tainting your name or what's the
well, you're tainting
not
it.
diluting the
tarnish.
value.
You are tarnishing.
Tarnish.
you're not.
You are
But
tarnishing.
no, you're not weakening your product. Saying,
But you're
okay,
not-
look,
Say if Make Toys did that, that's what it is. It's like they're not losing face by saying they're willing to take this price point. Instead, let it be called a KO and let's get our money back.
Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
just ask this question now about Takara and Hasbro. Other than their Transformers stuff, like are their Black Series and stuff getting KO too, or is it just their?
Some
robots.
do. Some of their Black Series do get
Okay.
KO'd.
But it's primarily the Transformers stuff, though, right?
It's primarily the Transformers Masterpiece stuff. It's primarily the stuff that's really boots on the ground wise is on the Eastern Hemisphere.
Figure arts get a lot.
But Bandai will come in and shut you down. Bandai is a scary company to mess with. They'll get the Federales to come in there and
That's because they got the dough. They've been
they
around
got the
forever.
dough. They're probably the most powerful toy company on the planet. The thing about Hasbro, the stuff that gets KO'd like Black Series and stuff is all like super popular sold out stuff. So there was like a KO of Black Series Darth Maul because it was sold out. It was going on the aftermarket for like $150 for a $20 toy. You know, the KO's KO'd it, but then what Hasbro will do to their credit is like they're releasing this archive line now where like they're re-releasing with new packaging Black Series classics that are hard to come by in order to kill the second market. If we take that same tactic and apply it to third party in a different route where let's say a company produces third party, let's use Runabout and Run Amok because it's kind of the constant joke. If they made 1,000 pieces of each, which is what I am suggesting that probably the average run is pretty close to, they could re-release those on a second release 8 months, 12 months later and kill the secondary market and also please fans by saying, look, we know you wanted it, here it is, when it's all a sham in the first place.
If it looks like it's all selling out, I'm increasing demand so that I can sell the
As
other
long as you're
500.
making up your money in that first 500, I guess.
Well, yes,
right?
but
Right.
also think about this. If you're leasing a space in another factory, let's take MMC for example, and you're leasing a space in another factory because you don't have your own, your releases are going to be limited. The reason why we see so many MMC repaints is because they don't own their own factory. So once they have the mold in, they just tell them no, inject it with purple instead of blue, or inject it with green instead of red. It's easy for that factory to produce that product. If they have any sort of lapse in production, it's probably because they have to go through a certain amount of steps in order to get a factory that they're on a business working relationship with in order to produce to make it up to their standard. They're trying to solve the problem of the dry spell in between releases. So if I'm releasing something in January and then I got to deal with this factory and they're not going to be ready again until August, well then I
Make
might as
enough
well
the first time.
Exactly. I might as well hold on to half of this stock in the giddy up in order to flood the market halfway through to make it seem like I'm still relevant.
See, I feel like X-Transbots does this, which is weird because they have their own factory, but they seem to be a company that will have quote-unquote second runs that have the same QC issues as the first run.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just going to say, who do you think, if you had to speculate, who would you say is the company that does this most often?
MMC would be my guess.
Yeah, MMC.
That's deliberately holding back.
MMC is one of the most business-oriented companies out there, in my opinion. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just think that they're smart. I think that they're business savvy.
Dude, they're masterminds.
If you look at the stuff that's kind of surrounding MMC, right? We have the reformatted, we have the Ocular Max, we have the Remix series, we have Planet Steel Express seems to be involved in some capacity as an independent distributor. Think about that for a second. Who else has that? Like if I'm making a product, let's say that the average price of this thing costs $20 to make, and they sell it to the distributor for $50 to double down. Now the distributor is selling it for $100 to double down. If I'm MMC and I have my own place, like a place to sell it, and I sell it for the retail value, I've just now bumped up my profits 300%.
I think it's 500%.
And they're the only ones doing it. Like, they're smart. And you get it quick because you're getting it from the horse's mouth.
I know, I'm surprised that none of these other companies just have their own online stores.
But I mean, there's less risk if you don't have your own store, right?
Right. You don't have the overhead. You don't have the responsibility. You don't have to do the work.
And you can unload it relatively quickly. Like, instead of unloading one to each person, you're unloading 50.
Stop saying load.
100.
Think about how spoiled we are as third-party fans, where if something is broken, 9 times out of 10, we can contact our distributor or contact the company and have a replacement part sent. Where are these replacement parts coming from? They just got a stockpile of replacement parts? That's not how the world works.
I think it just comes from stuff that had QC issues or wasn't quite right.
I think that's part of it. I also think they have. I also think that a fair amount of them probably have a stockpile of releases sitting around.
Yeah, they still wouldn't want to send you a piece of a perfectly good piece.
Why? Then you cannibalize that. So if I have an extra piece, right? I have 100 extra pieces. I'm planning on selling all 100 6 months later. You have a broken leg. I'll send you that broken leg. I'm setting that apart. Now the guy next that has a broken arm, I'm selling him the arm.
Right, but what about the people that all have the broken ankle?
That's a problem.
We're printing ankles. Man potty.
Risk.
A Brooklyn Euro.
Preparation H.
MMA fighter's ear.
A hanging red Christmas bauble.
Baboon's butt.
A baboon's ass.
A red doorbell.
God.
Mike and Ike.
Water balloon.
Milk dud.
Oh, I hate every single one of you.